Welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. President Xi Jinping's recent visit to Malaysia marked a significant milestone in the evolving relationship between both nations, Malaysia and China. The visit reaffirmed diplomatic ties and signalled a renewed commitment to deeper collaboration in areas like trade, technology and infrastructure. From economic cooperation to regional stability, the outcomes of this engagement could influence not only bilateral ties but also broader dynamics of the Asia-Pacific region. Well, to unpack this and offer us expert insights into the broader geopolitical and economic implications, today I'm honoured to be joined by DATO CHONG, Executive Director of the Belt and Road Initiative Caucus for Asia-Pacific, otherwise known as BRICAP. Welcome, DATO. It's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessie, for inviting me here.
Such a timely discussion as well, with so much of focus on the recent visit by the Chinese Premier to Malaysia at the invitation of His Majesty the King, but also as we looked at some of the very exciting MOUs that were signed. So that's a lot on the table that's happening at this point. But let's start with this. How would you assess the current visit, the significance of the visit of President Xi Jinping, given what's happening around the world?
Yeah, against the backdrop of intensifying US-China trade tensions and the ongoing restructuring of global supply chain, I think President Xi Jinping's visit to Malaysia carries a profound strategic weight, not only in advancing bilateral cooperation with Malaysia under the Belt and Road Initiative, but also further deepening our comprehensive strategic partnership and promoting regional development across Southeast Asia. I mean, to be clear, this visit is by no means an ad hoc arrangement. It's clearly a well-planned and a sincere, friendly gesture of President Xi to reciprocate our King's state visit to China recently. So, in fact, when President Xi met our King during his visit recently, he said to the King that he was pleased to fulfill his Kuala Lumpur promise made to the King 6 months ago, and he's willing to start the next 50 golden years of the Malaysia-China relations with the King. And moreover, the timing couldn't be more meaningful. We just celebrated our diplomatic establishment last year, 50 years of diplomatic anniversary last year, and this year Malaysia is assuming the chairmanship of ASEAN. So these overlapping moments provide an ideal platform to renew and elevate our partnership, not only for the benefits of Malaysia and China, but also for the broader stability and prosperity for the region.
I think you said it very nicely, the fact that we are welcoming the next half a century relations. It has been 50 years, and as we enter the 51st year, there's so many different areas that we're looking in terms of partnering with China and building further the bilateral relations and economic ties that both countries share as well. But Malaysia has been recognized by China for playing a key role within ASEAN as well. From your perspective, how significant is this recognition, the fact that China says we recognize Malaysia as not just a team player but a driver in ASEAN?
I think it's definitely very significant, not just in a symbolic sense, but in terms of real diplomatic way, which really strengthens Malaysia's standing within the region. If you look back, Malaysia has always been very proactive in engaging with China. It was, in fact, Malaysia was the first ASEAN country to establish diplomatic ties with China back in 1974. And many may not know that Malaysia also played an early role in fostering ASEAN-China dialogue, even before those mechanisms were formalized. And we can't forget that Malaysia was also an early and consistent supporter for China Belt and Road Initiative. A great example of that is the two countries twin park model, the China-Malaysia Qingzhou Industrial Park and the Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park, along with the expansion of Kuantan Port. These were actually some of the earliest BRI early harvest project in the ASEAN region. Yes, Singapore did have an industrial park in Suzhou, way before us. But what Malaysia and China built was very different. It was the first truly reciprocal model of its kind, and it's very impactful, very impactful. We have seen countries like Indonesia and Philippines trying to emulate the same model because it works, especially in boosting development in less advanced region like Kuantan. I mean, Kuantan used to be underdeveloped compared to the West Coast region. And also to Qingzhou in China, because Qingzhou was historically lagged behind more developed areas in China, such as the Pearl River Delta and also the Greater Bay Area. So in that sense, the recognition from China isn't just not of appreciation. It confirms Malaysia's strategic role and influence in shaping regional cooperation and development.
Let me know if you agree with this. Some analysts have suggested that the visit had provided or signaled to an extent the fact that Malaysia is no longer just a stopover in the Belt and Road Initiative, but a core partner in Beijing's regional strategy. Would you agree with that? And if so, does this mean that there is sort of an elevation of Malaysia's role within the region, that we've got the stamp of approval from a rising power like China?
That's a very interesting observation. While I understand where some analysts are coming from, I would like to say it's important not to oversimplify Malaysia-China relations as being solely about the Belt and Road Initiative. In fact, our relationship with China has long gone beyond the BRI framework. Let's not forget that even before the BRI was launched in 2013, Malaysia and China were already working closely under the China-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, which came into effect in 2010. And in 2011, both sides we have signed an economic cooperation pact that led to the establishment of the Kuantan and Qingzhou Industrial Park, years before the term BRI became widely used. And in 2013, we upgraded our ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership, which further deepened our collaboration across multiple areas. And fast forward today, both Malaysia and China are part of the RCEP, and Malaysia has also been accepted as a BRICS partner country. These are clear signs that our ties have matured and diversified well beyond infrastructure or state-led project. And in trade terms, China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner since 2009, and Malaysia was China's top ASEAN trading partner until 2016, before Vietnam overtook us. But it's worth noting that Malaysia was the first ASEAN country and the third in Asia to achieve the $100 billion mark with China back in 2013. And more recently, in 2022 and 2024, we passed the $200 billion in total trade. That kind of volume doesn't happen overnight. It built on decades of deep engagement. So while it's true that BRI projects like the Kuantan and Qingzhou Kuantan Port Expansion, ECRL, are often in the spotlight, they only form part of a much broader picture. Many of the Chinese investment in Malaysia, like Huawei and Proton Geely partnership, are private sector driven and don't fall under the BRI umbrella at all.
So the relationship runs much deeper than what meets the eye. And there's a lot more as well that is in progress as we speak. We're taking a quick breather. We'll be right back right here on The Nation. Don't go anywhere. Either you're watching The Nation Diplomatic Dispatch. Now, from the economic cooperation angle to regional stability, the outcomes of the engagement between Malaysia and China could significantly influence not just bilateral ties, but also broader dynamics of the Asia-Pacific region. And so here we are looking at what this implications could have, as well as broader geopolitical angles we can explore. Just before the break, though, we did speak a little bit about the significance of President Xi's visit and what this is signaling. But with 31 MOUs, DATO, and agreements already signed, that is sealing the deal, so to say, including the upgrade of the two two countries twin parks initiative. Perhaps walk us through some of the insights on how BRICAP is viewing this new partnerships and developments, particularly in terms of long-term regional impact.
I mean, among the 31 MOUs and cooperation agreements signed during the visit, we saw not only the continued commitment to existing flagship projects, like you said just now, the upgrade of the two countries' twin parks, the giant panda conservation, and the mutual visa exemption, but also some truly forward-looking agreements in emerging sectors. What really stands out are the strategic level collaborations in the digital and green economies. These include plans to establish joint lab for emerging technologies, promote the application of China's DATO global navigation satellite system, and set up a collaborative platform for AI plus new materials between University of Malaya and Peking University. It is worth mentioning that today, China invests over 3 trillion renminbi annually in scientific research and produces more than 80,000 PhD students, mostly from the STEM fields. So by tapping into China's strong capabilities in high-tech R&D, we can accelerate the upgrading of our own high-end manufacturing sectors. We can boost innovation capacity and create high-value, knowledge-based jobs with meaningful income for Malaysians. Yeah.
Okay, just to backtrack a little bit, a lot of the times MOUs stay MOUs. They remain as MOUs without escalating towards the next level. What was signed mainly on this visit as well were mainly MOUs. And so, in your personal opinion, is there a lack of promise or lack of will to ensure this agreements or MOUs materialize? Is it just more on paper than we will ever see come into fruition?
It's true that not all MOUs signed during high-level visits end up being fully implemented, but I wouldn't necessarily interpret that as a lack of commitment, because from my experience, especially dealing with China, it's important to understand how they approach these agreements. What I observe is that the Chinese side generally doesn't interfere in the execution of private investment projects. In fact, during signing ceremonies witnessed by Chinese top leaders, it's usually only the G2G or government-related agreements that are signed in front of them. I personally feel that at the government level, signing an MOU is still meaningful. It signals political will and strategic direction. Take the two countries twin park, for example. The Qingzhou and Kuantan cooperation started off with an MOU, and it set the tone and framework for deeper engagement. The detailed implementation, like joint ventures, land deals, project executions, was handled by the respective project owners and stakeholders. I actually find that this separation of role is quite strategic. It allows government to avoid over-committing to a specific project while still offering support at the policy level. And if anything goes wrong, you see, like disputes, delays, financing issues, it keeps the responsibility with the project implementer rather than the state.
Right, so it in a way keeps the door open as well for back and forth and to further build on that particular MOU or that particular idea without having to be solidified in a full commitment. Walk me through these numbers, as you've highlighted some of those earlier as well. Since 2009, China has remained Malaysia's largest trading partner. Last year in 2024, total trade stood at about 480 billion ringgit. That accounts for 16.8% of Malaysia's global trade. And so bilateral trade is very much in China's favor here. Is there anything that Malaysia can do to persuade Beijing to export more from Malaysia to even out that trade balance?
Yeah, you mentioned that Malaysia's total trade with China in 2024 was 484 billion ringgit. It's around 100 billion US dollar. But according to the Chinese customs, the figure was actually 212 billion US dollar, with China importing about 110 billion from Malaysia and exporting 101 billion to Malaysia. So if we go by the Chinese data, the trade balance actually leans in Malaysia's favor. But to be honest, this discrepancy have existed for decades and largely due to differences in calculation methods and third-party shipping routes. So I will not dwell too much on that because it's a never-ending story. But now on the real issue, can Malaysia persuade Beijing to import more of our products? Well, I think the answer is yes, but it requires a targeted and strategic approach. One sector that we often talk about is the palm oil sector. With the ongoing US-China tensions and potential supply gap in soybean oil, Malaysia palm oil could theoretically step in and fill the gap. But we have to be realistic. This is just not a matter of trade policy. It's about consumer behavior and perception. Well, from a Chinese consumer point of view, the soybean oil is preferred over palm oil, especially in households, because they perceive soybean oil as healthier compared with palm oil. Palm oil being high in saturated fat has been linked to cardiovascular risk when overconsumed. And soybean oil, on the other hand, is seen as a better option for heart health. So if Malaysia wants to narrow the trade gap through increased exports, we need to think beyond just asking Beijing to buy. You see, we should position our product more strategically by building stronger branding, educate the Chinese public about the benefits of palm oil if consumed moderately, and perhaps even co-invest with Chinese firms to innovate better palm oil product lines. So it's about working with the market, not just the government.
I think that's an interesting observation as well. There needs to be more education and awareness around what products we can take over,
yes.
But also looking at what we can innovate and perhaps also meeting what the demand is in China. We take a quick breather. We'll be right back on The Nation. Stay with us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Terima kasih rakan-rakan media. Pertama sekali saya mohon maaf ada sedikit penyelarasan waktu untuk sidang media yang susah sulit saya
Welcome back. You're watching The Nation. On the back of President Xi Jinping's recent visit to Malaysia, of course, that marked a significant milestone in the evolving relationship between Malaysia and China. Today, we look at some of the other areas of economic cooperation as well as regional stability and what this meeting or this visit has in terms of outcome for more engagement and more influence and broader dynamics for Asia-Pacific region. Lots to unpack here, Dato. Thanks for still being here with us. Now, the 5-year program for economic trade cooperation, that runs from 2024 right up to 2028 and is aimed at expanding bilateral trade. A buzzword here, a big keyword, trade, but you really have to make that have us have a sense of what that really means in terms of facts and numbers as well.
Yeah.
But how can Malaysian businesses, especially not so much SMEs but the MSMEs, capitalize on opportunities this program is helping to present, the 5-year program?
With around 1.1 million MSMEs in Malaysia, and most of them in the services sector, I think this program offers multiple entry points to scale up and to go regional or even global for our MSMEs. First, in traditional sectors like construction and manufacturing, the BRI-related projects in Malaysia, such as the ECRL, Kuantan Port Expansion and Industrial Park, can and should benefit our local MSMEs. It's important that within the Malaysia-China cooperation framework, our businesses can feel a genuine sense of participant and gain tangible results from these initiatives. And this aligns closely with Presidency's emphasis on fostering people-to-people connectivity as a core objective of the Belt and Road Initiative. And second, for SMEs in food, craft and lifestyle sectors, The digital space offers huge potential. For instance, platforms like Xiaohongshu, Little Red Book, are gaining popularity among Chinese consumers and tourists. And Malaysian brands, especially those in halal food, wellness and heritage craft, can use these platforms to reach to new target customers. And at the same time, they can also explore brick and mortar opportunities. For example, China Hainan Free Trade Port, which offers zero import tariff and low income tax, is a promising entry point into the mainland market. And with around 90 million domestic tourist arrivals a year, Malaysian SMEs could even co-invest with Chinese partners to open F&B outlets to showcase our products in Hainan. So overall, the 5-year program isn't just a top-down policy. You see, it's a strategic tool. And if used well, it can empower Malaysian SMEs and MSMEs to scale up, to go regional and plug into one of the world's most dynamic economic corridor.
I want to bring your attention to what President Xi has advocated for Asian values in terms of openness, inclusiveness, and to approach things in a peaceful manner as well. That as a counterbalance to global instability, which is what we're seeing now as well. In your view, how can Malaysia and China work together to champion these principles within ASEAN? We know that ASEAN is, Malaysia is the ASEAN chair this year as well. But how can both countries come together to really drive these values down?
President Xi's call to promote Asian value, such as openness, inclusiveness, and peaceful cooperation, like you mentioned just now, resonates deeply with Malaysia's own policy orientation. The Anwar administration's Madani framework, which emphasizes prosperity, respect, trust, and compassion, shares deep conceptual alignment with the Chinese Confucian values, such as benevolence, propriety, and harmony. And both traditions reject the idea of pursuing national interests through power capabilities embedded in the Western realist approach, which prioritize power competition over cooperative engagement. So instead of viewing international relations through the lens of conflict and dominance, Malaysia and China are well positioned to advance a value-based approach rooted in mutual respect and shared prosperity. And within the China-ASEAN region, both countries can jointly champion initiative that reinforces multilateralism, non-interference, and peaceful dispute resolution, core tenets of both Confucian ethics and Madani governance. Yeah.
That's exciting as well as interesting to see many key takeaways from the visit and our discussion today as well. Well, that brings us to the end of our time here. As Malaysia and China enter a new chapter in their bilateral relations, the road ahead is filled with both opportunity as well as responsibility. From trade and technology to diplomacy and regional cooperation, these decisions that we make today will shape the Asia Pacific of tomorrow. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. Thanks for watching. Do follow us for more updates that happens right here on The Nation. Bye-bye.